Oh, hi, friends. It's Josh Yeager, Santa Barbara dog walker. No dog with me today, and not in Santa Barbara. Glad you put those two together. I wanted to share with you a little vignette on something important. What was it? Oh, right. I remember now. I got distracted with the beautiful surroundings. And that is what is to be done when mom or dad's trust says, "Thou shalt fund the bypass trust for at dad's death." And the primary asset of the family is the house. Like, does mom really need to fund that bypass trust? That language, the mandatory funding of bypass trusts, is kind of old language. Maybe I see it a lot in trusts that are 20 years old or older, drafted at the first part of this century or the last part of the last century. And it had the mandatory funding of the bypass trust because the exemption amount was so low back then. Since that time, it's gone up by a lot. It used to be 600,000 was the exemption amount when I first got into trust and estates practice, and now it's over $13 million. So the old trust documents were designed when we needed to be more proactive about funding the bypass trust at dad's death to get the use of his assets or his bypass, his estate exemption amount. And now with the huge increase in the exemption amount, that's just not needed. But there are a lot of folks that are walking around with those old trust designs that have the shall language. Now, the alternative to the shall language is the discretionary language, the may language. The successor trustee, the successor settlor, that would be mom after dad's death, may fund the bypass trust if they want to, or they don't have to. And there's a lot of reasons that they wouldn't fund it. They're not going to pay estate tax anyway if the estate is less than 13 million, which the vast majority of estates aren't. Funding the bypass trust can be difficult when the family's primary assets are the family home. So you've got a nice home in Southern California worth $1.2 million or something like that. And mom and dad have paid it off, but that's the primary asset. Like, do we have to put half of the home into dad's bypass trust and then have a tax return to file for that thing? And does mom have to pay rent to that? It just seems silly. It may have been appropriate 20 years ago. It may have been the best way to avoid owing estate tax 20 years ago, but it just doesn't fit anymore. So for those of you that have those old trust documents and have the mandatory funding language, the bypass language of thou shalt fund the bypass trust at the death of the first settlor or testator, get those trust docs amended if you can ahead of time. It's not hard to do. You literally change one sentence and you change it from mandatory funding to discretionary funding. If it's too late, if dad's already died and the attorney's now telling you we have to take half of the house, dad's half of the community property, and put it into the bypass trust, and you're like, this seems crazy, then there's something called a notice of proposed action where mom could say to the kids, hey, look, I know the trust doc says I'm supposed to do this, but I'm providing you a notice that I, as the successor trustee, I'm not going to do it. And the reason I'm not going to do it is the estate is non-taxable. Because we're below the exemption amount. You kids aren't going to be disenfranchised by me keeping 100% of the house rather than putting half of the house into dad's estate. I don't want to spend the extra money on the administration of a secondary trust, dad's bypass trust, with a unique tax ID and a unique tax return and a need for income to pay for half of the property tax, etc. So mom says I'm not going to do it. If mom does that in the format that's required in California, the notice of proposed action format, the kids have two choices. They either can sign off on it and say, yeah, we're on board with this, mom. This is a good idea. Let's do this. We would have done it if dad was alive. He would have amended the trust. So the kids sign off on it, in which case we're free and clear. Like, it doesn't matter what the trust doc says. If all the beneficiaries and the trustee agree to do something different, that's fine. That's what a notice of proposed action is helpful for. It's clarifying that. Also, it means that mom can't be sued for doing this, for failing to follow the instructions of the trust instrument. Kids have to either affirmatively sign off on it or take no action within 45 days. If they don't respond at all, then it's presumptively approval on their part. So they got to do something. It's like it's a drop the mic time where if the family's going to move forward with this, we're going to do it. And if not, somebody's got to step up and say this is a bad idea. So that's the approach. If you've got the old trusts that say shall fund and the family's got a non-taxable estate and the family doesn't want to go forward with it, consider using a NOPA. The ANIDOS folks can help you with these types of issues that come up frequently in the estate settlement practice. ANIDOS Law is our name. Trustee-help is our website. Ciao, folks.